Hello, this is Wmpyr. I just saw this video that you guys are seeing right here. The most important thing classical fencing teaches you. I highly recommend that you watch this video. I thought it was excellent, really, really, truly excellent. So that's why I'm making a video about this and really applying what I learned from this video to myself. Okay. The first thing is you might be asking why are you watching a fencing video? And me being martial arts, Escrima, Filipino martial arts, because some people would say like boxing is not a martial art. I disagree. And same perhaps with fencing. They might say that is not a martial art. And I strongly disagree with, yeah, boxing to me is, wrestling is, fencing is. I would even go as far as to say that Taibo is. And I know a lot of people would probably disagree with that. Martial arts is the medium. And if it has anything related to martial arts in there, then yeah, to me, why isn't it a martial art? You know, um, it might be stronger or weaker in its martial element. So, for example, if we're talking about like sword fighting in a play, how much of that is going to be uh, martial arts, and how much of that is they really don't care about the martial aspect. Martial meaning war, the art of war. So some of the patterns in the choreography is coming from actual uh, skills that came from the battlefield, I would say. Now how much of that? Probably very little. Like it's gotten watered down. Why? Because in a play you just don't need it. So we could say the same with something like Taibo, where the battlefield is no longer the main emphasis, right? Your fitness is. But it still has martial elements in there. So therefore, I would still call it a martial art. But anyway, that's just my opinion. So the reason why I'm watching this fencing video is because in my uh, main style, Escrima, Filipino martial arts, it has an extremely strong influence from fencing, basically, from European fencing. Um, and I know some people will deny that up and down, and I strongly disagree. And I don't think that admitting that hurts the Filipino culture. Um, we want to see the truth. And I think it speaks very, very positively of Filipino culture. To me, one of the reasons why I like Kia, Kali, Escrima, Arnis so much is that it is a combination of West and East and West, you know, East and Western martial arts. That is what I'm, one of the things that I really, really like about Kia. Um, and you know who's a famous person that did that? It's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee did that. So yeah, I don't think it's anything to be ashamed about to say that a big influence came from the Spanish fencing. I think it just shows how much the Filipinos highly thought of, some Filipinos, right? And I think people are when they're getting their history wrong. I was one of these people at first. I thought that the Filipinos battled against the Spanish, the oppressors. They battled, therefore, um, the Filipinos are the good guys, the Spanish are the bad guys. You kind of think that way from when you're viewing it from the Filipino view. That's not what happened historically. No. Okay. what happened in this kind of warfare was what happens throughout history over and over and over again. The Spanish are greatly outnumbered. You think they're going to come in to the islands, the Filipino islands, and wage war when they're vastly outnumbered? Unlike the movies, quality does not beat quantity. In a movie, you have someone, like a Bruce Lee movie. You have quality, someone who's amazing like Bruce Lee, and he could take on 20 guys. In real life, that's not how it works. That's a movie. So in real life, it doesn't matter how awesome the Spanish conquistadors were at the time and how great their technology was and their skill was. They're vastly outnumbered. They would have gotten murderlated. All right. So what happens was the Spanish comes in and they find out that the Filipinos are waging war against each other. There are different tribes and they're battling each other. So they're going to team up with one that they feel they can manipulate, one that's gonna, hey, I rub your back, you rub mine kind of thing. And, we can give you some technology, we could give you some skill to help you defeat your enemies. And what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Is that the saying? So yeah, because your enemy is my enemy kind of thing. And that's what's happened throughout history over and over again, especially when you look at colonization and that kind of thing. It comes down to this kind of manipulation. And so that's what happened, and the Filipinos that sided with the Spanish, were they sellouts? Dude, we weren't there. The same thing happened in Japan too, and of course, the way the Japanese responded was a little bit different, but circumstances, when we go into details, are totally different. But what the West was trying to do to the East was the same idea there, And I mean, let's face it, you're having trouble battling other factions. And if some other outsider came in and said, hey, I can help you out, wouldn't you want that help? But you do have to consider, what are the consequences? What is the price to pay for that, right? So those are lessons in itself, but I'm just saying this is what happened in history. And, without putting our emotions and our opinions and whatever, we should just look at what happened for real. What is the truth? And then from there, you don't judge them, like I said, we don't know. We don't know the situation. You could easily say, oh, these Filipinos that sided with the Spanish are traitors. I don't necessarily think so. Okay. And anyway, so a few select Filipinos were brought over to Spain and they learned Spanish fencing. And that is the influence that we have to this day in Kia, Kali, Escrima, Arnis. So that's why I feel like it is important for me to study fencing, at least a little bit. Without a doubt, I feel that it is important. And I've read, I've looked through some fencing textbooks, videos, and stuff, and one of the things that they usually say is that fencing today is not meant for combat. That it is a sport and it has moved away from its combat roots, from its battlefield roots. And they say that, right? This is this is the first video that I've seen, or even the first anything that I've read where the person says the 1980, pre 1980 and post 1980 is different. So pre 1980 is classical fencing, and classical fencing, from what this person described to me, was that they're still thinking about battlefield. They're still thinking about, let's use this in combat. And then he says post 1980 is not. And so he describes the training. The main, what I gather, the main difference is that pre 1980 is, the concept of when you get tagged, you admit it, and this is a gentleman's art, because, you have to admit it. You have to be honorable in how you fence, is the main message I got here. And there were some wonderful sayings, like, and the last one here, the master the sword, master yourself, is a wonderful one. But this video was loaded with some amazing quotes and stuff that this instructor had probably been teaching his students over and over again, to where, that kind of stuff, it becomes, it's repeated over and over, that when you're the instructor, you just, you really start to, how do you call it? That becomes dogma almost, or depending on the person, some people will truly live by their word, and it becomes a code of honor, and how you conduct yourself in life, not just in the gym, the dojo, your training grounds, but how you live life, right? And this goes into that, which now I want to talk about, because when I was, before I get into Filipino martial arts, let me talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the reason why I talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu so much is that it was really one of the last styles, just in my journey, that I really, really had to bust my butt learning. Like, now is more refinement is what I'm doing, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant, or saying I've closed the door to learning anything. No, that's not it. It's definitely, I'm still open to learning. I'm a student for life, but you just get to the point where you've accumulated so much and you're refining. It just gets to that point. So I'm focused a lot more on refinement. However, back in the day, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was one of the last styles where I was really, really trying to learn it. It was so difficult, because it just, I'm not built that way. I'm not built to be a good grappler. And yeah, I'm a small guy, but there are other small, thin people that are excellent grapplers. I'm just not built like those guys, okay? So anyway, grappling is still, in a way, fresh in my head. In a way, it's PTS, post-traumatic syndrome, uh, and it definitely has a big influence for me. Not necessarily in just the skill or the techniques, but more so in the way of thinking, because by that time, like I said, it was one of the last. I'm putting it together with all my other martial arts experiences, so it wasn't just, let me just learn grappling and I don't believe in the other styles anymore. Let me ignore those. Let me just do grappling. No, I'm not a convert. So even when I was doing grappling, I was still training in FMA. I was still training in stand-up striking. And to me, I kept those very sacred to myself, because I knew that I would never let those other ones go, and I didn't. The whole purpose was to mix it all together, to blend it in together and make it all come together and work for me. So I never converted, So thinking like that and putting it all together really made me view things not just from a grappling perspective, but as a martial art as a whole. And anyway, let me go back to the BJJ. So in BJJ grappling, you tap. So that's similar to this in fencing, where you say touche. You get tagged, you admit it. And he said in a lot of other sports you don't. The ref calls it, and heck, many times we see the athlete go against the ref, fight, and go, no, that's not what happened, Whereas the fencing is not that way. It's not supposed to be that way. So that honor system to me is the key here and very important message. And so in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, yeah, we're supposed to tap, right? This concept of tapping, if you're a wrestler, it's like, huh? What is that? It's and coming from other martial arts styles, you might feel the same way. I'm gonna tap? What the hell, right? And you take it even further, and this is something that I learned. So anyone that's learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu right now, this is a good lesson. I'm not saying that I'm better than you are or whatever. No, this is something that I benefited greatly from, and I've taken it to heart, and I pass it around. I share it, which is, for example, let's say I'm inside someone's guard, and they put me in the kimura. Okay, so they're getting me in an arm lock. The immediate defense is to grab your gi pants, grab your pants so that they can't crank your arm, right? You hold on to your pants for dear life. That's one of the defenses, very common defense. But let's say I was too late for that. Okay, so I didn't get to grab. Before I could grab it, my arm's already up, and they're trying to crank it. Okay, so now I'm going to resist with everything I got. Muscle, I'm trying to not let them just crank my arms. I'm trying to bend it back. I'm trying to pull it back in. I'm fighting. I'm resisting with everything I got. At this point, I should tap. I shouldn't be doing that. I should just tap. Okay. And they're cranking with everything they can because I'm not tapping. Right? That's what this turns into. At this point, I need to tap. Why? Because if not, I risk injury because I'm putting in a lot of force to defend it, and they're putting a lot of force to crank it. And anytime you put in a lot of force, anyone that uses knives know this, when you're trying to cut something and you're putting in a lot of force, there's danger of a wild, erratic movement coming up. So danger of risk of injury, right? So at this point, this person gets me in a kimura and I'm fighting it. Don't fight it. Tap. On the streets, I would even, look, I wouldn't even say even in a competition match, but on the streets for sure. Don't tap. Let them break it. You keep fighting no matter what. Okay, whatever. But, on the battlefield, sure. It's just an arm. Who cares? But no. In training, injury is the greatest enemy. You shouldn't risk that. That's ridiculous. Well, why are you putting your ego and your whole being on the line when your purpose there is supposed to be learning? And the lesson that you should learn right there is that you screwed up. You were too late. You were way too late. So next time, try not to be so late. That's what you want. So try to get into practice where next time you'll see it coming better. You'll be able to read it and anticipate it better so that you won't take so long. Why did this happen? Were you distracted? Were you too focused on your attack? What happened? So you need to correct those things, right? So that's the lesson. Okay, but then you might go, well, Wmpyr, what about the ones where, okay, it does become close like this, but then I am able to wiggle out and the match continues. So Isn't it important to learn how to wiggle out when it goes all the way like that, and be able to be able to learn how to fight last second? That's also an important skill. Shouldn't I have that? And yes, I can see that that can be beneficial for sure, because not always are you going to get, perfect defense. So there's times where you do screw up. There's probably a lot of times, especially if your opponents are tough. And that's where it really counts, right? When your opponents are tough. That is important. That can only be done with certain partners. With certain partners that you guys know each other well, because that is a dangerous way to train. So you can only do that with people that you 100% trust. They got your back and you got their back. So that's a special relationship. That's not any training partner. That's not, oh, I went to the dojo today and these people showed up. I never seen them before. No, you don't do that with those people. You don't know those guys. Okay. So this is extremely important. Not every training partner is the same. I've explained this before, especially in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because there is a lot of sparring in as part of the training. Not everybody's the same. Some people, like this person's just going to come at me. They, in their minds, they're keeping track of win-loss in the dojo. So, they need to win. Their ego is right there. So they never left their ego behind. And so this person's a dangerous person. So against this person, you have to protect yourself. It's not about how well can I do jiu-jitsu against this person. No, this person, you have to protect yourself. You're learning basic fundamentals of just surviving. And so against this person, you're getting more of a street realistic training. Okay. And then there might be somebody else that is more relaxed but very technical. So against that person, you could do technical training, So every partner is different, offers something different, okay? That's the way that I view it. Maybe this person, they're smaller than me, and they just not strong as me, and they don't have grit. So I could just outgrind them. I could outperform them, just with grit alone, because I have more determination. I have more fighting spirit, right? So with this person, maybe it's a good chance for me to not use any of that and develop my sensitivity skills. The opposite, and not just crush them, but develop the other stuff with this person, learn how to flow. So then when transitions are happening quick, I'll be more used to that. So anyway, like I said, every training partner offers something different. And so if you want to do that kind of training, where last second escape type training, how to, if I'm caught, they checkmated me, okay? But I want to be able to still not just immediately tap or give up. I want to be able to make that as safe as possible, which is a legitimate ability, a legitimate skill. Okay, that can only be done with a very specific partner. So I make that very, very clear. Okay, so most of the time you got to admit to yourself, okay, because most partners aren't going to be able to do that. Most training, that's an amazing training partner. If you could trust, and they're not going to hurt you, that they're going to look after you. Okay, so you're not tapping and you're trying to resist that, and they're trying to crank it, but they know if it goes to a certain point, they're not going to keep going, because they know it can hurt you, and they'll never hurt you. That's an amazing, amazing and rare training partner. If you meet that person in the BJJ dojo, exchange numbers, so in case one of y'all disappears, you want to still stay in touch with that person. Okay, that's a valuable training partner. But anyway, back to the norm, most people, right? If they get you in a Kimura and you screwed up, You were too late to grabbing your pants to defend it. Tap. Go ahead and tap. Yeah. And next time, tell yourself, next time I'm going to work on being earlier, start my defense earlier and more observant. I'm going to work on that. Okay. That's a great lesson there. So, okay, BJJ wise, you have that. Okay. So that to me, being able to admit to yourself honestly and say, hey, I'm going to set my ego aside, forget about this win-loss thing, and I'm going to go ahead and tap. Okay, there's no need for me to go home with a sore arm, or there's no need for me to risk an injury at this point because we're both using too much force. Just freaking tap. This honesty is so important. One of the things that if you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's an important lesson and is one of the things that makes BJJ so good, that it puts you in this position. Okay, now some people, they could be black belts, never learned this lesson well. Okay, there's some people that never understood this. They're sociopaths or whatever. Okay. Or I don't know, maybe the environment they're in or who knows. Okay. So just understand that it does exist and you choose that path. It's a much better, honorable path and it will help with your skill. Okay, so now Filipino martial arts wise, let's see, how will this apply to Filipino martial arts? So with Filipino martial arts, it's more subtle than grappling. Grappling is more clear. Oh, this person got me in a submission hold, got me in a choke, got me in a leg lock, ankle lock, arm bar, whatever. I mean, it's pretty clear cut, right? You tap, and even then it's difficult. I'm telling you, it's difficult because stuff happens pretty quickly. But anyway, so you have to constantly tell yourself, tap, 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 right? So with Filipino martial arts, if we're training, it's, you have to admit when you were tagged, when you were cut. Just like here in the fencing, you got to admit that, all right? And normally in Filipino martial arts, we're not really taught to do that. I think a lot of people might naturally do that just to be cool, or in some ways, believe it or not, people do it to protect themselves. Okay, and I know I have this tendency where if someone hits me, right? So we're sparring in Filipino martial arts or training or whatever, but let's say we're sparring and I get hit, then I will say, oh, you got me, good shot. And that's protecting myself. Isn't that weird? It's like, well, no, you're admitting it. So you're honorable. That's a good thing. No, by me saying that, it's almost like saying, well, this is just practice. So this is easy going. And this is easy going. It's practice. It's okay. And I'll be the first to admit you got me. So I'm cool with that. If it was real life, it would be different. So you see how the human mind twists all that? It twists it. And then I go, this is okay. I can admit it. No, you got me. Good job. And it's like, no, wrong. That's not the right way to train. You got tagged. What the hell are you doing? You should never get tagged. Never, ever, ever, ever get tagged. You just got tagged. What the fuck? That's the mindset I should go in. And so I try to do that to myself where I'm training. So I'm doing Heaven 6 with this, white belt or whatever. And you know the saying where white belt is the most dangerous. In some ways it's 100% true, but that's a lame excuse. It's a white belt, right? It's a beginner. They shouldn't touch me. I should be in total control, perfect control, because they're a beginner. I should manipulate them like they're in my spell. My skills should overwhelm them, right? But if they hit me, that means I wasn't able to. So I screwed up there. Okay, so I'm doing a heaven 6 with this beginner, and they hit me on the hand. All right, that's my screw up. That's me. Yes, their control wasn't good, but what do you expect from a beginner? So to me, that's not their fault. That's me. My concentration was off there. And it happens a lot. I admit it. It happens a lot because and this is my excuse. I'm looking after them so much then and I put my own safety in second gear because I'm trying to teach and I'm trying to watch them and I focus too much on that and it messes me up. And that is a lame excuse. It is true, but it's still a lame excuse. So at that point, I tell myself, no, you need to be better than that. So 100% you need to keep their safety in mind. 100% you need to teach them what they need to learn and you need to be observing that. But as you're doing that, you need to 100% protect yourself. And if they even like glance your fingers, that is an error that I cannot afford. So once you have that mindset, it really, really helps. So I've had this where my students, right? They apologize to me and they go, I know, I'm a beginner and you're teaching me a lot, but you're not gaining anything. So I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm learning a lot from this. And that's what I mean is exactly what I'm telling you guys right here. I raised the bar to level 10, whatever, but I a high enough level for me that it's challenging for me. So my challenges are different than your challenges. It whether I learn or not is up to me. So this going back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I remember because I was more on the technical side and more, I guess, experienced back in the day. Uh, but really, I guess as a martial arts artist, I was experienced, and like I said, technical, very technical. So, and I know, gosh, that just sounds so arrogant. So let me say I was geared more towards that kind of thinking, and that's why the instructors would trust me with children and also women and there wasn't really older people coming in, but children and women. So I'm here training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm desperately trying to learn this stuff, and I'm partnered up with an 8-year-old, and I'm going, gosh, this sucks because I need to get in some real practice because in about 10 minutes we're going to be sparring and I'll be sparring against that guy across the room who has been my nemesis. That guy is no joke, and I'm looking across the room and that guy's partnered up with another adult and they are getting some serious repetitions in while I'm partnered up with this 8-year-old and I'm going, crap, I feel like I'm falling behind. Every class I come to, I'm not getting the repetitions I need, and I'm falling behind. What do I do? So at that point, I didn't have a choice, and I said to myself, okay, I need to pretend physically that I'm equal with this 8-year-old, or the 8-year-old is an adult. I need to pretend like they're super strong, or this lady that I'm working with is stronger than me. So I imagine that, and then I make it into a battle in my mind, where um, I have to battle technique versus technique with this person. And I'm also adding stuff like, oh, right there, if they wanted to punch me, they could punch me. So I need to cover up. I'm adding stuff like that, And so I did that in my training, and it was making it a lot more challenging. And now it's exciting. And now I didn't feel like I was falling behind so much. And when I did that, I learned something interesting. There was this girl, she was an assistant instructor there, but she was a girl, and she was a thin girl, and I could crush her physically. I'm not a big guy, but I was strong enough that I could just crush her, right, if I wanted to. And I decided, after making the decision that I'm going to think this way, I decided I was just going to go, not use my strength at all, not use my weight, not use my strength, and just go technique versus technique with her. And when I did that, I found out that I couldn't do anything against her. And I was like, oh, this is super frustrating. She's really good. Okay, what do I do? My body wants to keep going to strength. It goes, well, shoot, I cannot beat her in this technique game, so I want to use my strength. I want to use my aggression. I want to use the things that I know I could get away with. And I was like, well, that's how you're not going to develop technique. So it was an amazing lesson right there, amazing lesson. So anyway, back to Filipino martial arts. Um, you have to you can learn from anybody. And this quote actually comes from my dad. My dad said, you could learn from anybody as long as you're willing to learn. And I was like, well, Dad, he was talking to me about martial arts dojo at the time. I opened my own school. Well, I was gonna open my own school. And he said, yeah, you open your own school, martial arts school. I will fund it. That's what he told me, right? And I said, Dad, I don't know what I'm doing. You're gonna just lose money. And he said, well, then you need to go learn how to run a school. And I told him, well, I don't know any good schools here. And basically, I told him, like, I don't know of any really good schools that. And he was like, well, look, are there bad schools there? And I said, yeah. There's plenty of schools that I consider, third rate. They're not good. And he said, well, those schools are still ahead of you because they have a school and it's running. And they've been there for at least a few years, right? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, he said, they are doing something right. And they might be doing a lot of things wrong, but they're doing some things right. And so it's up to you to go learn. You could still learn from them. You could learn, maybe a few of the things that they're doing right. And especially you could learn the things that they're doing wrong. Learn from it is what he was saying. So you could learn from anybody, even if they're not good. You learn how not to do things. So that was excellent advice on his part, and I've taken that to heart to this day. And so that's what I'm saying is by you being honest with yourself, and that's the connection to this video. When he's saying you get tagged and you say you get touched, is touched was the word he used. You get touched in fencing, you say touche, right? So that honesty is incredibly important in the martial arts. We want this honesty. Because like I said, with this honesty, I'm able to now, I could do a lot with my training. I could imagine things and make it more challenging. By tapping early, I could say to myself, okay, the next time I need to start my defenses early, whatever the case. And then in Filipino martial arts, I get tagged and I have to honestly admit that and go, whoa. And that is really which that came from BJJ on my part. But, like I said, by the time I was doing BJJ, that's a culmination of other styles, okay? It wasn't just BJJ. My mind was already blending in a bunch of other styles. So I hate to say that it only came from BJJ because it didn't. My mind was at that point. thanks to all these other experiences. But definitely BJJ was where it happened, where my brain was like, oh, okay, I need to admit, I need to be honest that yes, I am relying too much on strength, or I'm relying too much on my speed or agility. So when you take that away, technically I'm no different than this girl in front of me. She's 110 pounds, and I'm 150 pounds. Really, technically, there's no difference. So this honesty, being honest, is what greatly helped me with Filipino martial arts. And like I said, it's so difficult to do. So I'm working with students, and we're using training knives, and we're cutting and stabbing at each other, and we're going, okay, so I'm trying to control your knife, and you're coming in with an attack, and oh, did I get cut? Whatever. Okay, that cut, it's minimal, or all these excuses pop up, like, when a knife is involved, you're gonna get cut, stuff like that. And that's where I started to go, wait a minute. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, you can get cut because there's a knife here, but this cut was terminal. That's critical, man. I would have died. Then there's no more technique, no more skill, no more nothing. You're dead. So you had to start going, something's up here. And then, even then, people will say stuff like, well, knife is difficult. The knife is difficult, therefore, this kind of thing happens. Like, they just accept it, and it's like, no, you cannot accept that. You cannot. We got to aim for perfection, at least in the dojo. And then understand that in real life, it's not going to be that easy, of course. But if we're not aiming for perfection in practice, then what are we doing? What are we doing? We're just farting around. Like I said, in the Filipino martial arts training, where I'm like, hey, good job, you got me. And I can say that because I don't care. No, I need to care. And I need to not let that happen again. And I need to put my ego aside. And it gets to the point where my students feel bad for me, and my students would hit me, and they would be like, oh, no, that was, you weren't ready. No, I came in unexpected. You weren't expecting that angle or whatever. You know what? Those are all lame excuses. You nailed me. You got me. And I have 30 plus years of training, and maybe you only have 2. What's up with that? That's messed up, right? So, yeah, I can't let that go. And I shouldn't. I shouldn't just be like, hey, well, that's because that the street is tough. This stuff, knives, they're fast. No, those we can't be making excuses like that for ourselves. So honesty. Honestly admit, I was cut. I cannot let that happen. In real life, I would have died, or that would have been critical. I would have been opened up really, really bad. I would have bled to death. No, that is not cool. All right, next class, not going to let that happen. I'll do my best, everything I can to not let that happen. You got to go in there with that kind of mentality. As a student, honestly, I'll tell you guys, it's much easier because I could just focus on that. But as the instructor, I got lesson plans, I got to be observing. I got, all these things. I got to manage the class. It makes it way more distracting, way harder, but those are excuses. I have to use that as a powerful tool that even though I have to do all of that, I can still manage. That's what I'm aiming for, you know, and that will give me excellent practice. So that's the lesson that I learned here is the honesty part. Bruce Lee was another one that talked about this kind of thing, where he said to honestly express yourself. That's difficult. He said, and he says it's so charming too, right? The guy has so much charisma. The way he just talks, super charming. I'm watching Warrior, by the way, the TV show, and in Warrior, what is it? Was it? I think the original screenplay is loosely based, or I don't know if it's um, closely based off of what Bruce Lee wrote as a TV show idea. I don't know, but something along those lines, right? Um, is it the same as the Kung Fu story? Like I don't know. In Kung Fu, which was, of course, we all know David Carradine got the part. It was supposed to be Bruce Lee, right? And he is a Chinese guy, comes to the U.S. looking for his brother. I think that was the story in this Western world, right? So this is kind of like, instead of looking for his brother, he's looking for his sister, and it is kind of a Western world, but it's a little bit more after that. It feels like, but because this, I gather that it was like after the railroad stuff. Railroad, the Chinese working on the railroads. That was more Western, right? The Western times, Wild West times. But anyway, I'm enjoying that TV show. I kind of wish there's a little bit of stuff they put in there here and there that if you're a Bruce Lee fan, you're gonna recognize. Oh, like he did that nose thing that Bruce Lee does, or that technique, the double stomp that comes from Bruce Lee, or look at that sidekick, or he's using the chain punch from Wing Chun, or those kinds of things are thrown in there. I almost wish that the way he talked was a little bit more like Bruce Lee. Kind of like in Mandalorian, right? The actor, I don't know his name, but the actor, the way he spoke like Clint Eastwood. So in this one, yeah, I think it would have been. I don't know. Maybe that it would have been a bad idea if he talked a little bit like Bruce Lee. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent now. So I've spoken long enough. Highly recommend this video. I'm gonna watch it again. It's definitely something I need to probably watch over and over again. But yeah, please check it out. And that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and take care, folks.